What's up? Justin here. Welcome to 65 Drums, the place to keep on top of all things electronic drum related. Hope you're all having an awesome day. Today I'm breaking down my first impressions of the Roland TD50KV. I recently got to play this, and I gotta say, it is really hard to hunt down one of these suckers. In all of Ohio, in all of the music stores I've traveled to go find different electronic drum sets, there's only one store in Columbus that actually had one of these. The reason why it's hard to find a demo model of these is because it's hard for a music store to justify spending $5,000 or $6,000, whatever their cost is for this drum set for them to buy it, and then have to sell it at a loss in like 5 years. So it's hard for a music store to be able to justify that. They gotta have a humongous budget. But I finally found one, and here are my thoughts on it. This thing is really fun to play. It is currently my favorite electronic drum set I've ever played, and every time I play a Roland flagship, I say that because Roland is top of field. They make the best electronic drum sets in the world, and they have for quite a while now. But I have to say that with a but on the end of it. There are ways to make a better electronic drum set by cobbling together a bunch of different elements. So you could get drum tech shells with ATV cymbals and a Pearl Mimic module and this and that. You can build and you can cobble together different brands to make a better drum set than the Roland TD50KV. But as far as one brand making the module, the cymbals, the shells, the heads, the sensors, just creating all of that on their own, Roland is still the best company out there, and they're like this benchmark that everyone measures themselves against, and that's just because they have a long track record here. But I will have to say, I was slightly underwhelmed when I played this drum set. This happens when you sit down to play a flagship, because it's the price of a car. You know, it's $7,500 or so, and you sit down to play it, and it's like, that's it? I was expecting like angels to fly down and communing with the force, and you know what I mean? It was supposed to be this amazing thing, but really it's just an incredibly rock solid drum set with good sounds, amazing playability, and it's top of field. That's what it is, and you have to pay to get that, unfortunately. It's just really, really expensive. Let's break down the specs before I go any farther. You're getting a 10-inch high tom, two 12-inch floor toms, a 14-inch snare, a 14-inch kick drum, an 18-inch ride cymbal, a 14-inch and a 15-inch set of crash cymbals, and a pair of 12-inch hi-hats. I don't want to compare this against the Roland TD30KV too much because I'm actually making a dedicated comparison video on that right now. But I will just say this, there's a lot of similarities between this one and the previous flagship. You got nearly the same hi-hats, nearly the same toms, nearly the same kick drum, nearly the same cymbals. There are just some little subtle differences. The main difference in this kit and the previous flagship is that incredible snare, ride cymbal, and drum module. Those are the big showstoppers. Everything else is just basic tiny little tweaks on the formula. Roland did a lot of crazy things with their ride cymbal and their snare drum, and not so much in their drum module. They actually played it too safe with the Roland TD50 drum module, but they did take some really innovative steps with their ride cymbal and snare, and that's why you'd actually want to buy this. Now here's the thing, you can get all of that on the Roland TD50K. So when I compare the TD50K versus the TD50KV, you're not really seeing a giant jump. Like, you can get the impact of how nice the drum set is on the TD50K, probably 80%, 90% of the way there. This drum set, you gotta spend thousands and thousands of extra dollars just to go the extra mile and get, you know, the really nice drum rack, the really cool see-through cables, slightly larger crash cymbals, slightly larger toms, and just the overall stage presence goes up. But you can get the impact of this drum set on the Roland TD50K. The outstanding feature of this drum set are the module, the ride cymbal, and the snare. You can buy those as a standalone package, and the reason why they sell them as a package is that the ride cymbal and the snare are USB cabled. Yeah, that's not a verb. Anyway, they're using USB cables. That means that they only work with the Roland TD50 drum module. Now, the reason why they're using USB is because they packed a ton of sensors into both of these pads. I've talked about this in my Roland TD50K first impressions video. If you want to check that out, I'll link it down in the description below. It's really a cool video if you want to learn more about the K version of this drum set. But it's the main attraction to buying this. You can buy other tom pads for less money. You can get those larger, cymbals used on eBay. You can scrounge around for that stuff. It's the snare and the ride cymbal and the drum module that make this drum set. And again, that's all available on the Roland TD50K version. The snare actually senses the static electricity in your hand, so when you play cross stick, it knows that you want to play cross stick versus a rim shot. It's not 100% accurate, at least on the firmwares that I've played on, because I've played with this snare on at least 3 different TD50s, okay? So I don't know what firmware each one of those modules were on, but it's not always 100% accurate. It's a big improvement over Roland's previous snare drums, so I'm not trying to knock it or anything, it just works most of the time. Also, the ride cymbal also senses the static electricity in your hand, so you can actually mute it by just resting your hand on top of that ride cymbal. That ride cymbal is the best electronic cymbal I've ever played. I gotta repeat this, the ride cymbal and the snare are the 2 main selling points for this drum set. Other companies can claim similar features to everything else on this drum set. They can claim drum sets that look just as nice or sizes that are just as large, but it's just the responsiveness of those 2 pads that really make this drum set worthwhile. Also, that snare drum is using Roland's first 3-ply mesh snare drum head, probably my favorite drum head I've ever played. It's a really nice 3-ply mesh snare drum head. I wish all the toms and everything were using that same mesh material, but unfortunately it's only the snare that has that. Now let's talk about the drum module for a second. I'm not going to dive too deep into the specifications and stuff in it. I'm going to talk about some general things. Roland has a very specific sound, and that sound has been getting better and better and better. It didn't sound that amazing back on the TD10. Over time, they've really fine-tuned their formula. The best way I can describe the Roland sound is that it's not trying to emulate acoustic drums 100%. It's a stylized take on the drum sound. It's kind of looking at a painting of a river. It's not that actual river, it's an artistic interpretation of the river. Now, Roland has finally decided to include the feature of being able to stack sounds and crossfade between them, and that includes importing samples and crossfading in between them. I really like that feature. A couple of other things you may not notice just by, glancing at the information on this drum set. There are 2 headphone jacks, a 1/4 inch and an 1/8 inch, so no matter what kind of adapter you're using, your headphones will always fit there. Also, there are XLR outputs that are balanced on the back of the drum module. That way you can forget about using direct boxes anymore. You don't have to worry about that in case the cable snake on the stage doesn't have a 1/4 inch input. You can just go from the XLR outputs on the back of the drum module. That's a nice touch. I wish all drum modules had that. And the sounds, I really enjoy them. But they're not as good as the Mimic. For a long time, Roland always seemed to either make the best drum module in the entire world or really, really close to the best module, like it was neck and neck. This time, I feel like the clear winner is the Mimic drum module. The triggering is great on this thing. The latency is really, really low. That's one of the standout features of all Roland drum sets. The latency is much lower than Yamaha or Alesis, which is something not a lot of people talk about. But again, the sounds, you're going to want to use this with Superior Drummer 3 if you want to get the world-class sounds that you want with an electronic drum set of this caliber. It's really overpriced. It's like $2,400 if you buy it separate, which is way, way too much. I will have to say though, it's going to last for a very long time. I absolutely love my Roland TD30. I feel like that drum module is actually easier to find your way around than the Roland TD50. I don't really like the button layout and stuff. It could be because I'm so used to using the Roland TD30, but I just don't like the way you find your way around the menus and stuff. There are a couple of new editing features in this drum module. You can adjust things like cymbal thickness, the pinginess of the bell. You can adjust how many wires are in the snare strainer. I thought that was really cool. But here's the thing. Roland is taking samples and they're using lots of advanced techniques to bend and twist and shape the sound to make it seem like the cymbal is thicker or larger or the tuning goes up and down. It's just a lot of trickery that's going on to create the sound you're hearing. And that sound shaping stuff is what gives Roland its stylistic sound. Because when you're using all kinds of advanced reverb and sound effects and stuff to bend and twist the sound, it's going to change it a little bit. It's going to give it this sound. It's really hard to describe. But yeah, you're either going to like it or not. Just listen to a lot of sound demos. I'll link a couple in the description below if you want to go listen to this. I think it sounds great. I think you can use this on stage. You definitely can. I want to switch back to the pads for a second. Didn't talk about the kick drum yet. This thing is an absolute rock. It is solid. It will not move while you're playing it, and it shouldn't because it's over $1,000 if you buy this thing separate. It's the best electronic kick drum pad available aside from using a 22-inch bass drum that you convert using high-end components. It is a really, really good kick drum pad. The hi-hats are the VH13 hi-hats. Again, those are rock solid, probably the best hi-hats out there. Again, we'll have to compare them against the ATV hi-hats. I'm not sure how they compare to each other. But until those, it was unquestionable. The VH13 hi-hats were the best. Really, really fun to play. For the budget conscious, go with the VH11. But if you're watching this and you're seriously considering the TD50KV, budgets aren't really an issue for you. You're either, floating money or you're willing to take out a loan. There are people in both camps, believe it or not. So wrapping this up, this drum set is incredible to play. Roland has been fine-tuning their system since like the late 90s. They know what the heck they're doing, and that's why everybody in the industry is measured against Roland performance. But that's the thing. It's way too expensive. Roland is up in their heads about this. They know they're the best, and that's why they're charging so much money. It's a joy to play, it sounds great, and it's got the Roland name, the durability, low latency, and a lot of features that have just been stacking on top of each other, the little things. A lot of these high-end products, it's not any one big feature that you can point to, it's just a ton of little features of convenience that are just really hard to explain. But this is a great drum set, it just costs way too much money. And that kind of just describes every single thing Roland makes, doesn't it? If you want to save a few $1,000s, buy the Roland TD50K version because you're going to get 80 to 90% of the impact of this drum set by buying the K version. So I recommend looking at that one because you're getting that snare, you're getting the ride cymbal, you're getting the drum module, and those are the things that set this drum set apart. And you can get that on the lower end version, just replace the toms and get larger cymbals if you want to, and still come up ahead if you're smart and you're shopping on eBay. Hope you guys have an awesome day, and I'll see you in a few.